Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Live with James from the Paint People. So today, thank you for joining me. We have a lot to talk about. I'm going to give you some of my top taupe colors in the paint world. And the way that I've done it is kind of the way I like to do it. Just give you one from a couple different paint companies, because I know not everyone uses the same one, especially our international viewers. So yes, I will be including a deluxe co.uk color today. And I think it'll be fun just to go through different companies, different types of taupe, because there's a lot to taupe. It is sometimes a misunderstood neutral, but it's one that I think is very powerful in design, mainly due to the fact that it has this duality of being neutral, muted, but it has a lot of body to it typically. It's usually a darker color, so it's very, very rich. So that is what today's topic is. It's going to be some top taupes. I'm going to be going through them. I got 5 of them for you as I take a swig of some decaf coffee. And that's my daughter too. There she is. Christmas is coming, everyone. Very exciting. So as we are waiting for people to come in, just a quick little disclaimer. So I'm going to be trying to respond to chat as much as I can throughout the video, but I might not be able to get to everyone. I'll try and sort of pick out the ones that I can. If you do want to support this channel even more than you already do, we definitely accept things like super thanks and super chats. And of course, super chats I will prioritize because, you know, that's the name of the game here on YouTube. So why don't we get into some of these colors? And maybe even before we do that, let's talk about what taupe is as a whole, as a concept. It is essentially a neutral color, and it's a neutral color that combines brown and gray. Now, most people don't really like gray these days because it is quite boring and played out. But the beautiful thing about taupe is it takes the aspect of gray that is just nice and clean and simplistic, but then it adds the nuance of warmth through brown. And brown is a pretty varied color too. You can have browns that are lighter, darker, a little more towards the greeny gold side of things or the red side of things, a little more of a chocolatey vibe. So there's a lot that taupe brings. And even if you bring up a Google search, like I did earlier, let's see if this works. Great. This is taupe color, literally. That's all I searched for on Google. And there is quite a bit of variance here, as you can see. There's these kind of dustier taupes that are a little more like, dried mud kind of things. Then you have these taupes that aren't really that taupe, but they're more tan, but it just goes to show. There's a lot of variance here. Then you have these more gray leaning taupes. And then it's actually, I want to point out this article here, which is really great. It is Kylie M Interiors. If you haven't checked out her content, she's great. And this just goes to show how nuanced taupe is when it comes to lighting conditions. Natural light versus artificial light. So more of a cooler light, and then more of maybe a tungsten bulb, lower Kelvin value light. So yeah, clearly you can see there's more of a brownish lean here, but then a lot of that brown kind of goes away once you have cooler lighting. So before I get into these colors, just a reminder, everyone, please test your colors out. Make sure you test them throughout the day. Very, very important stuff. I talk about it at nauseam, whatever the case may be. But it is super important. Test your colors out, especially with these neutrals, because you don't necessarily know what you're going to get sometimes. They are kind of in the middle, in terms of, are they cool? Are they warm? That's kind of what makes them cool, like figuratively, not temperature-wise. Okay, so let's talk about these colors. The first one I'm going to go with is a Sherwin-Williams color, and it is called Charleston Gray. Now, the website has gone through a bit of a change, but you can kind of see some taupe action at the top. And then you also have these real-life examples from real people. Super useful. And it even shows you the color being used here. I will say, though, a little caveat here. Because these are taken by people, you might think this is super reliable information. This is great. This is actually the paint on someone's cabinetry or doors. So that's what the color is going to look like in my home. Not necessarily, because you will have different lighting. You will have different flooring. You'll have different everything in your home, potentially. And you'll also have a different camera. So the camera settings can make things look cooler or warmer. Like in this example, it almost looks like it's green. And I think part of it is like tricking us because you have this glass shower, which has a bit of a green hue. And then even the wall back here, if it isn't Charleston and Gray, it kind of looks like Pigeon by Fair and Ball, actually. But you can start to see in these other photos, it's a little more of a browny kind of coloration, almost like a cement clay color. Yeah, here we can see it's quite brown. So don't be confused with these pictures, but it is a beautiful color. I can tell you that. It just make sure you test it to see how the color is going to look. Like in person, I can't imagine it would look this green, but you never know. Taupe is sometimes a bit temperamental, but that's why we love it. So Charleston Gray, probably my favorite taupe when it comes to Fair and Ball paint colors. A deep, warm gray is how it's described. Beautiful. Okay, for a British color, British from England, Deluxe. Deluxe is also available in Canada, but they're slightly different in terms of the colors they use. Deluxe, I got to go with warm gray, which is interesting because there's going to be warmer taupes in this little list here than this one. I almost feel warm gray is going to be the representative for like a charcoal taupe, a really dark stone boulder gray that has a little bit of that brown mixed in to warm it up. But this is one that I could see having a tendency to feel a little bit more green leaning in some cases. And if you go on the Deluxe website, it is the UK one, so .co.uk, warm gray with an E, not an A. And what you'll get here is these pictures, which unfortunately they don't blow up, like they don't expand. But it gives you the vibe of what we're looking for. So this is an example of taupe that is going more towards the gray side of things and just has a little dash of brown, just a little bit to sort of pepper it. But love it. And it just, again, a little teaching tool, the variance of taupe. Now, moving on to Bear. Bear paints Espresso Martini. So now right away we can see from this one to this one, big difference. This one has way more of like a kind of like a coffee vibe, like a light milk coffee. And we see a lot more brown here, a little bit of tan almost too, right? There is much more warmth coming. And with Bear, you can also see this little tool here called Similar Colors, and it can give you lighter and darker colors, which is nice because it gives you an idea of what kind of family the color belongs to. This doesn't necessarily mean that they all have the same undertones. In fact, in most cases, it doesn't mean that. But at least you get an idea, okay, this color is being grouped with a bunch of gold, a bunch of these harvest gold autumnal colors. And we can see that very clearly in the lighter colors. In the darker colors, it gets a little more taupey, right? More of a gray lean happening here. But this is going to be one that is a little bit warmer, which is cool. So warmer, cool. I can't stop saying that. But I do enjoy it. So Charleston Gray, more of a chocolatey kind of brown taupe. Warm gray, definitely more of a slate gray, but it gives you that bit of brown that kind of pulls it into greeny territory somewhat. And then you have Espresso Martini, which is a lighter color. It's a 34 LRV, which is kind of light-ish for a taupe. It is going to be a little more user-friendly, I would say. And what's great about a color like this is if you have a lot of neutrals already in your home that are of the lighter variety, this is an easy way to just add some depth while still fitting into an otherwise neutral palette. And I actually went and did a color visualization for this color, and this gives you an idea of what it might look like. And I used it as an accent wall in an office. So it is a white room, which I'm not huge on. I don't like white necessarily on walls, but it's kind of cool. And it just goes to show you what the contrast would be if you had like an off-white wall and then this nice accent wall in your office that is really neutral, but still makes a statement. And I like doing this in offices because this is the wall that you're probably going to be looking at when you're doing your work, let's say. So instead of having a bright white wall reflecting back at you, you get a nice taupe to just fit in with the furniture and all that, but just relax your eyes and just allow you to focus on your work. So another great use of taupe. You don't need to think of it as just another neutral like beige or gray. It can absolutely be an accent color without breaking the mold too much in terms of coloration. Okay, two more. And these are probably two of my favorites. By Sherwin-Williams, we got Dorian Gray. Now, this is another one of those taupes, kind of like Warm Gray from Deluxe, where you almost start to see a little bit of a green shift in some cases. And I think you'll see it way more often when you use it outside. And a lot of people, they love Dorian Gray as an exterior color, me included. I think it suits exteriors very, very nicely, but interiors as well. 39 LRV, so it's even lighter than Espresso Martini, which means it's going to reflect more light. And in this case, they decided to do a bit of a color wash with this taupe. So everywhere, like on the built-ins, the molding, the trim, all of it, you just have Dorian Gray. And then it just creates this extremely neutral backdrop. And then you have this chair that just pops out. So another trick is instead of a single accent panel, you can just put it everywhere in a space, especially if you have a good amount of natural lighting in. Then the stuff in your room that has color especially will just pop that much more. So Dorian Gray, interior color, it's great, but as an exterior color, that's where I see it being used most. And that little bit of a green kind of tilt will be that much more prominent outside because, of course, the sun, cool lighting. It's going to cool it down even more in a really beautiful way. But it's not my favorite taupe. And Peter, if you're watching, he's my boss at the Paint People. He's one of the owners. He used this color recently in his home, and I love this color. I have always been fond of this color, even when I used to mix paint at the paint store. It is called Benjamin Moore's Escarpment. It's so good. Okay, Escarpment. This is interesting to me. So, as a color, we can see that it says a hint of violet deepens this intriguing shade of gray. And you might think, ooh, purple gray? That's kind of strange, James. What are you talking about? But hear me out. This is a paint color that I think is so transformative as a gray. Really, it is a taupe, but it's on the gray side of taupe. There's a lot more gray than brown here, but the brown aspect gives it that just super interesting nuance. And there is kind of that combination of gray and red that does give it a little bit of a purple touch. And the thing that really exemplifies how awesome this color is on the actual physical color chip. So what I'm going to do here is I'll show you what like a traditional color preview chip looks like. So this is just good old color preview, kind of a dusty mauve. And sure enough, we got cinnamon slate on the bottom. But what's cool about these color preview color chips by Benjamin Moore is they're arranged just as the color hue, you know, sequentially from light to dark. Not all color chips do this. Like if you look at the historical collections, this one kind of looks like it's doing the same thing, but in actuality, these are slightly different colors with slightly different undertones. But these ones, they're pretty much just guaranteed. You can say, okay, well, if I pick this color, if I go with this as an accent color, they're going to work because they're in the same family. Anyway, in a lot of cases, your color chips, they're going to look kind of like that. They're going to look like one color going all the way down. So the reason I bring this up is Escarpment's color chip just stands out more than any other chip I can think of. Look at this. You see that? Amazing. Like it's so simple. It's so clear. Like it just stands out. It's like a highlight. Like this is the one you want. This is the one you want. So it's obviously paired with other taupes, Flagstone, Hiking Trail, and Marshlands, and they are on the brown side of things. But this color is the one that just pops for me. And it has this beautiful quality to it that just allows it to stand out so nicely, especially if you do have browns kind of mixed in or warmer neutrals. Having escarpment there, it just stands out really, really cool because other grays, they have a blue undertone. That's just like maybe that just pigeonholes your design to either like a transitional or a coastal sort of feel. But escarpment really suits, I feel, this new movement of earthy, organic, slightly boho colors that are becoming more popular. And I love it as an option. So as you can see with taupe, you can go with kind of a chocolatey brown. You can go with almost a charcoaly gray brown. Then you have espresso martini, which is more, I would say, entry level, like traditional, just sort of brown with gray mixed in, middle of the road. Dorian gray, kind of going more towards that green. And then, of course, escarpment, which has this touch of purple that is absolutely brilliant to me. I love this color. I hope you guys like it too. But for now, why don't we see who's in the chat? Because I love you guys. We got Max. Good evening to you, Max. We got Charlotte from Georgia. Georgia. Sorry. Rest in peace, Ray Charles. Patricia, hi there. Love your videos. Thinking I might need a taupe for my 2003 Baltic brown countertops. Ooh, interesting. I hope escarpment is your cup of tea because I love escarpment. Glad taupe is back in style. Yeah, I think it is. Honestly, I have always loved taupe. I think it's just kind of like gray, but even more so. There's more than meets the eye with taupe because you can have this perception of what you think it is. Oh yeah, just a darker gray. big whoop. But because there's so much to it, because there's so many different types of taupe that exist, you can go more brown centric, you can go more gray. It allows you to introduce depth within a neutral palette. And for the majority of people, I would say neutrals are still super useful. They're super handy because they are much easier to implement, especially with, more contemporary modern decor that, is more readily available. As time goes on and you start to develop your own design style personally, and you start to maybe get a bit more eclectic and you start to curate things and fine tune your process, then it's obviously easier to venture out of neutrals. But for everyone else, taupe is the way. If you need a dark color, if you need some richness and some body, you gotta consider it, honestly. Woody woot, made it. Beautiful. Okay. Escarpment is lovely, but I enjoy Benjamin Moore's Waynesboro taupe. It's more saturated than escarpment, but looks great. You know what? Let's pull that one up. That's a good one too. Waynesboro taupe. It's in the name, isn't it? So Waynesboro taupe, I would say, is a little closer to espresso martini. So it's the one, this sort of kind of brownie taupe. Waynesboro taupe is quite similar. And even in terms of LRV, 33.45, 34. But it's a beautiful color. Don't get me wrong. Escarpment just has that pop, like gray, that beautiful gray. Like, I know we hate gray, but come on. This is taupe. You can't hate on taupe, everyone. It's like super gray. We love it. But Waynesboro taupe, yeah. Great color, too. A little more toasty, I feel. And then we got Guest. I hate those colors. They're so late 90s, early 2000s. Well, Guest won't even give your real name. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, there's some nostalgia, I would say, but everything's cyclical, baby. Trends come and go and then come back again, And I do always say this. I'm not just saying that, okay? It's not about the paint colors. It's how you use them. It's how you implement them. It is what you involve with them, like your furniture, the other stuff in the room. That's really what counts, because it's so easy to fixate on, I remember this color being used 20, 30 years ago. I'm like, well, that's maybe a good thing. I mean, if it was liked then, maybe it has a timeless appeal. And I do think there is some timelessness when it comes to taupe, because at the end of the day, it's a dark neutral. And I don't think those are going to go away anytime soon. There you have it, guest. All right, Holly, love Dorian Gray. Great, me too. Yeah, I see it, like I said, as an exterior color more so in terms of in practical use, but I think it's beautiful inside as well, especially if you love a greenish. You can kind of pair a nice light beigey gray green, and I think it will look wonderful. All right. Thanks for the recommendations. Of course. Anything is better than the rental gray nightmare inside the house I'm buying. So this is lovely. Well, yeah. It's funny because I watch like shows like Love It or List It, good old design shows, just daytime TV. It's a lot of fun. But you start to notice when you're watching reruns of those shows, just from like 4, 5, 10 years ago, it really is very apparent based on the colors that you see. Like, they're like, wow, look at this brand new kitchen. And then they have, just white cabinets, white countertop, and then like a pale blue-gray on the walls. And they're like, ooh, so modern. It's great. Like, I mean, it was great, but now it's just gray and like kind of meh, if you ask me. So that's funny. I feel like you can tell time in years based on the colors that are on Love It or List It. So taupe is a color that makes me feel like I'm colorblind, because no matter the undertone, I always see a shade of pink. Well, I guess you're not blind to pink, so maybe that's something. It's interesting actually because yeah, I feel like a lot of taupes, if you have more of the brown happening and it's a more of a warmer, chocolatey, almost red undertone brown, then you will see that pink or even purple. But if you go towards the gray side of things, which maybe you don't want to do if you're not a huge gray fan, then perhaps that greeny quality could come out a little bit more. And it also has to do with your lighting. Your lighting could play a huge role. So here's a pro tip. If you paint your walls taupe and you thought they were perfect until you actually put it on the walls and they're kind of feeling a little bit off, before you go and repaint, maybe try a different light bulb in your house. I'm serious. Like if you try changing out the light bulbs, if you're okay with this, maybe go a little warmer or a little more neutral in terms of the light itself, it could actually have a huge impact on how the color looks. And in fact, I know it does. So that's me. I change out my light bulbs pretty often, believe it or not, because I'm lucky enough that upstairs I have quite a bit of windows, no big deal. So I don't need to rely on overhead lighting. In fact, I use them as accent lights. I have these just very soft, incandescent bulbs that give you a nice little glow. That I don't really rely on the light itself. But if I wanted to brighten up the space and maybe make my walls that much more clean looking, I would say, I would just put brighter light bulbs in. So the power of lighting, you can manipulate it for your own good. What color would you pair with a taupe wall? Well, that's the beauty of taupe. It's neutral, so you can just go with a lighter or even a darker neutral. And I can even use Dorian Gray as an example right here. I love how Sherwin-Williams does this, by the way. Oh, guest is back. Let's get rid of guest. I'm just kidding, guest. You're more than welcome here. So, what trim color would you pair with a taupe wall? I mean, for most colors, white. White is always going to be a great option in terms of just nice and clean. But you can always do this little trick and just skip a few colors on the lighter side of things if you want maybe something that is on the more neutral, subtle side of things. Repose Gray, it's actually a neighbor of Dorian Gray, but it's a bit lighter. Or you can go the opposite way and go into the darker side of things and go deeper, like a Gauntlet Gray, which is another awesome color. Or even Black Fox if you want to go that much more. So the answer is, what trim color would you pair with a taupe wall? Taupe trim. You can go light taupe, you can go dark taupe, you can go off-white as well, or you can technically, take the gray component out of taupe and use that as a trim color. So there's a lot of options, is what I'm trying to say. Just make sure that you're not picking something that is competing undertone-wise. So if you have Dorian Gray on your walls, maybe don't pick a dark, chocolatey, reddish trim. It'll be way too complimentary, even though they're both kind of neutral. So, oh, yes, I like this. Good stuff, Charlotte. I like it too. I love taupe, man. It's a bit of a cheat code, honestly, because very few people are kind of bored with taupe because there's so many good colors that can be classified as taupe, which I think is, really, really fun. Oh my God, Chris. If I could choose any grandson in the world, I'd choose you, James. Love your show. Like legit blushing. Oh my goodness. Well, if you were my grandmother, then you'd have a beautiful great granddaughter. There's the lovely Isla. Showing off to the world, my Paint People fam. Oh, man. Waynesboro taupe is sharp. Shout outs to Waynesboro taupe. As a color family, how would you differentiate between taupes and beige? Good question. So essentially, taupe is, you can kind of classify it as a darker version of grayish. So grayish, it's not an actual color. Well, I guess it's probably in the dictionary now, but grayish is gray and beige, but taupe is gray and brown. So that is the main difference. Beige is a much lighter neutral. It is more sandy, creamy. And then brown, of course, it's the color of chocolate. It is more rich. It has more body to it. And therefore, taupe ends up having those things too. So I would almost compare beige and brown more than I would beige and taupe because they're just the warm aspects of these colors. So taupes in general are going to be cooler than beiges because they do have that gray, and they're also going to be a lot darker than beige too. The two colors work hand in hand very, commonly. So if you do have beige, you can easily incorporate taupes in the same space, no problem. I don't have a good example of it here, but I might be able to pull it up real quick. Let me see. So we have, beige here. So what if I do vintage pewter or even dove, which is kind of creamy beigey, and then you have wild truffle, so a little more dramatic, or even this lampshade here, so taupe and beige. So that gives you the level of difference between the two. So neutrals through and through, but they do different things, absolutely. So yeah. I use shades of off-white, coral, touch of olive green in my taupe living room. That sounds beautiful. I love that. How can you not love olive green? I love olives. Slight olive tangent. I got some olives at Costco the other day because I love olives. And it was like, they were Spanish olives. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but it tastes a bit weird. Like they have like a spiciness to it. Like I don't really feel like I've had a spicy olive with like orange stuff floating in it. Like, it sounds gross, but I digress. Off-white, olive green, a coral touch here and there. Love that. Love green, like a deep green, either olive or even more of a dark teal, and those bits of coral. Like I have a chair upstairs, an accent chair that has a lot of those colors. So I definitely approve for sure. I think one of those shows did the house in agreeable gray. Agreeable gray. Great color. And also another great choice to pair with any taupe. Absolutely. No judgment, Yvette. Absolutely not. Okay? Oh, Charlotte. Yeah. I repainted once because we saw pink undertones. Yeah. I guess some people, they just want pink in a girl's room. They don't actually want their taupe to have that pink undertone. It's tough, I think. I think taupe can be especially tricky as a color because unlike other lighter neutrals, like those grays we've talked about, they have a lot of colorant in them. They have a lot of depth. So the colors that are manifesting one way or another will be that much more apparent, right? Because they're there. They're noticeable. They're accents. They're focal points. So if you don't get it right, or if you do test it out, sometimes even a tester can only tell you so much. When you actually are in the space and you see it throughout the day, different days with different weather conditions, different cloud covers, it gives you a much, more robust, complete picture. So yeah, that's a bummer. But I think if you do go for a taupe that you like that has maybe more of that green lean, which sounds a bit spooky too, but don't be spooked out. It'll be fine. It'll help combat, I think, some of that pink quality. So something like a Dorian Gray, theoretically, could maybe be a decent choice, a good direction. Fabulous. Thanks for the tips. Thank you, Yami. Love that. Actually, I grew up being called Jamie, which is fun. Please look up Dunn Edwards taupe colors. I will, and that's a reminder to all of you guys. If there's other paint companies that you want me to talk about more, please let me know, because maybe we might bring back Color Code or Color Quickie, dedicated color reviews. Might start doing that in December. So I'm going to start queuing up some colors that we can start talking about again. give you all the need to know information about said colors, and then some, maybe a couple color pairings, like a light and a dark option that go with it. Because I think they're fun. I think there's a lot of people that are searching for some information on a specific paint color. So if we get through them all, I think we can help a lot of people. Yeah. Fans have found that stone hearth matches Bromley taupe exactly. What do you think of stone hearth for kitchen cabinets? Amanda and Michael de la Cruz. Coincidentally, I use stone hearth on my cabinets at my condo. Literally. I used that color on my cabinets and I loved it. Yeah. So I think it's an awesome color. It is on the warmer side of things, but we picked it because it suited the countertop we had. We had this beautiful granite countertop. We had black subway tiles, and we didn't want to change either of them. We didn't really have the budget or even the want to, because we liked what was there. And we had plaster of Paris on the walls, which was a Benjamin Moore CSP color. And Stonehearth was the color that harmonized it all together. We absolutely loved it. We put matte black fixtures on it at the time. Maybe wouldn't do that now, just because I feel like matte black is a bit forced nowadays. But considering we had the black granite and the black backsplash, it worked quite nicely. So yeah, Stonehearth, really, really cool. I'm looking for an off-white taupe from Behr or Sherwin-Williams. Any suggestions? Ooh, let me do a quick little peek here. Off-white taupe. This is an interesting one because this is another thing that I like to mention to people. Even though taupe is very much, described as a dark color, something that is much more rich and has a lot of body to it, I'll often talk about paint colors and say, yeah, this off-white has a taupey touch, a little taupey vibe. And that's because I feel like there's off-whites out there that looks like they had a little bit of taupe mixed in, and it gives you just that slightly toned down quality. And I think if you were looking at an off-white taupe, what about something like Eder white? So it's classified as a cool white. And yes, there is a gray aspect to it, but I also think there's some brown kind of mixed in too. So the way that I like to describe it is you start with a big can of white paint, and then you dump in a little bit of taupe, give it a good mix, stir it up, and then you're given Eder white. Even something like Cloud White by Benjamin Moore, I often describe it to people as a warm off-white that has a taupey touch. There's just a little bit of, like, not necessarily gray, it's almost like a bit of taupe. Like, it's a warm gray that's kind of mixed in to just soften it ever so slightly. So, yeah, taupe, there's a wide spectrum in terms of depth levels, in terms of undertones and hue. There's a lot. Kind of like red, technically. If you get very specific, there is a such thing as a really light red, and it's called pink. Like, there's a huge spectrum if we're talking hue. And the same goes for taupe, in my mind. Yes, you have your stone, earthy, gray, brown colors. Then you also have your midtones. And you can even have your, like, lighter colors as well, if you wanted to be very specific. Charlotte, I like Stonehearth. Me too. Me too. Oh my gosh. Okay. I know we're not talking about this right now, but I'll talk about it. So typically, yeah, whenever we talk about taupes, I like to keep the subject matter on taupes, but it's a smaller group today, so we can kind of deviate a little bit. Seema, I'm repainting my house. It's only 11 years old, but needs a freshness. My husband's in love with Chantilly lace. I just think it's too stark, right? Yes. Chantilly lace gets this. Yeah. Here's what I'll recommend. If we're not going with taupe, even though this is a taupe show, yeah, I think Chantilly lace is nice and clean, but the problem with really bright whites, other than the fact that they take 3 to 4 coats typically, is they end up reflecting a ton of light. They look really stark, And also, you'll notice the corners of your room might look a bit dingy and dull because of how the shadows get manipulated. So, if you really wanted something clean, I'm actually looking up at your other suggestions right now. You have Simply White, White Dove, Oxford White, Cloud White. Which one should I paint? All the rooms the same color. So great options there. Simply White, I would probably steer away from as well, because even though it's a bit less bright, it's still very bright, and there is a bit of a yellow undertone, which is typically nice in most cases, but in some other cases, it can actually get a bit greeny, which might be a bit suspect. And because you're carrying it throughout your entire home, the chances of that greeny kind of off-putting quality showing up increases. So, of the other ones you mentioned, White Dove is beautiful. It's my favorite cabinet white, I think. But I think for walls, it's good as well. A little more on the creamy side of things. Oxford White is a good choice as well. It is more of a gray, and I have used it on an entire home, both walls, trim, doors, even ceilings, all Oxford White. Cloud White's another good one. Probably a better alternative to Simply White. If it were me, I would maybe go towards Cloud White if you want something warm. If you wanted something clean, if your husband, if he really liked that sterile sort of clean white that Chantilly lace brings, check out Decorators White as an alternative. So it's similar to Oxford White, but I find it just a little more just usable. And it's in the name, Decorators White. Decorators do like it a lot as a white. Okay, last little couple questions here. I went with Dunn Edwards, Miner's Dust, and I wish I went with more of a taupe color. Well, that's why you gotta test your colors, eh? Or just like, it's hard, it is. It's hard. All these paint colors, it is so overwhelming. But the nice part about it is you live and you learn. So as you make mistakes, you realize, maybe I could have gone darker. Maybe I should have gone with that color. So for next time. And hopefully you don't dislike it enough that you're just gonna want to repaint immediately. Like, at least you can live with it, and maybe you'll appreciate it with time. This color that you've not been happy with. Okay, well, I think that's a live, everyone. That is a live. We're gonna call it here. I am back on Friday. We are going to be doing a color palette pyramid on Friday, and I'll also talk a little bit about a design style that I think was super common and kind of disappeared, but maybe still is a thing. So we'll get into that on Friday around 8 o'clock, I think is a time that works for most people. Today was 7:30, which is a bit earlier, but I think 8 o'clock is better for the West Coast people. Yeah, West Coast. Okay. I love you. Thank you so much for chatting. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments. You can leave them in the chat. And also, I'll see you Friday, I hope. And if not, then I'll see you next week. Take care, everyone. Have a good day or night, wherever you are. Bye.